Faith is not simply a belief you carry in your mind, it is a posture of your spirit, a divine alignment that positions your life for supernatural order. When you align yourself with God, you stop trying to force things to work according to your own strength. You stop wrestling with outcomes you cannot control. Instead, you begin to flow in the rhythm of God's purpose. It's like stepping into a current that carries you further than your feet could ever take you. Faith becomes the invisible hand that moves pieces, opens doors, and orchestrates events long before you arrive. When you walk in faith, you begin to understand that nothing in your life is random. Every connection, every conversation, every closed door and unexpected turn carries intention. And even when you don't see it, God is weaving a pattern. Sometimes he hides the thread until you learn to trust the weaver. Faith teaches you to rest, not because everything makes sense, but because you know God is in control. It teaches you to breathe when life is shouting. It teaches you to stand still when everything demands that you panic. Faith is the anchor that steadies your soul when storms rise, reminding you that you are not drifting aimlessly. You are being guided. There were times in my own journey when I thought things were falling apart, when I thought God had gone silent, when nothing looked like the promise he spoke. But every time I returned to a place of faith, my eyes began to open. I would see how God had been arranging things behind the scenes, how what I thought was a setback was actually a setup, how what I thought was a delay was a divine pause, how the road I resisted was the very path that led to breakthrough. Faith reveals the divine plot twist hidden inside every trial. And when your life is aligned with God by faith, you stop reacting to circumstances and begin responding to destiny. You stop being moved by fear and start being motivated by purpose. You stop trying to control outcomes and begin to surrender to divine timing. Suddenly, the things that stressed you lose their power. The things that confused you make sense, and the things that seemed impossible begin to unfold with ease. Because when your spirit is aligned with heaven, heaven begins to align everything around you. Faith sets the stage for miracles. It creates a space where God can work freely in your life. And the moment you choose faith, you activate a divine sequence, one that pulls every piece of your destiny into perfect alignment. There is something sacred about the first moments of the morning, before the world starts demanding, before responsibilities start pulling, before noise tries to drown out your peace. Those early moments hold a spiritual power many overlook. When you begin your day by surrendering to God, you are not just praying, you are positioning your entire life under divine guidance. You are declaring, Lord, orchestrate my thoughts, direct my emotions, shape my decisions. And heaven responds to that kind of surrender with clarity, strength, and supernatural alignment. Morning prayer is not a ritual, it is a spiritual activation. It is where you reset your atmosphere and reclaim your identity. It is where you remind your soul that you are not walking into the day alone, that you are not depending on human strength, but on divine provision. When you rise and invite God into your morning, you step out of the natural and into the supernatural. You invite wisdom to lead you, discernment to cover you, and peace to guard you. You create a shield around your spirit before the enemy even attempts to distract or discourage you. I remember countless mornings when I woke up overwhelmed by all that needed to be done, deadlines, decisions, responsibilities waiting like mountains. But each time I paused, took a breath, and surrendered the day to God, something remarkable happened. The weight lifted, the fog cleared, answers came, opportunities unfolded, conversations were guided, and situations that could have gone wrong were quietly redirected by God's hand. Because when you give God your morning, he takes responsibility for your day. This is why the enemy fights your morning so fiercely. He knows that if he can steal your peace early, he can disrupt your direction. If he can distract you before you pray, he can distort your perspective. But when you rise with intention and declare, Father, I give this day to you. You shut every door the enemy would try to use. You close off anxiety at its root. You silence confusion before it forms. You secure victory before the battle even begins. And there is a mystery in morning surrender that many people discover only after years of striving. When you start your day with God, the day bends toward blessing. Obstacles shrink, solutions appear. Your spirit becomes sensitive to God's nudges and instructions. You begin to move in harmony with heaven's agenda, not hurried by fear or pressured by life. Morning prayer is not just talking to God, it is aligning your heart with his heartbeat. It is allowing the divine order of God to settle over every hour of your day. It is saying, "Lead me, Lord, and I will follow." And then watching him straighten paths you didn't even realize were crooked. In the quiet of the morning, surrender becomes your strength and prayer becomes your power. And when you start your day with God, you will never walk through it the same way again. There will always be seasons where the pressure around you intensifies, where life feels heavier, where challenges multiply, where answers seem delayed, and where nothing appears to be moving in your favor. Those are the moments when God is not punishing you, he is positioning you. He is stretching your faith, strengthening your spirit, and preparing your character for a level you have not yet reached. Pressure is not the sign that you're failing. It's often the proof that you're close to something significant. And the only way to walk through pressure without breaking is to anchor yourself in unshakable trust. There were times when I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, when I couldn't see what God was doing or why he allowed certain doors to close. I questioned, I wrestled, I cried, and I waited. But every time I decided to trust God, despite not understanding, something powerful shifted inside me. My fear began to lose its grip. My anxiety began to quiet down. My spirit grew stronger. And I realized that trust is not built when life is easy. Trust is built when life is uncertain. Trust is forged in the fire of adversity, in the silence of waiting, in the tension of not knowing. God uses pressure the way goldsmiths use heat to purify, refine, and reveal what's valuable. And sometimes what he is strengthening in you is not your ability to endure hardship, but your ability to keep believing. Because faith is not measured by how loudly you praise God when everything is going right. Faith is measured by how firmly you hold on when everything is shaking. When you can say, "Lord, I don't see the way, but I trust you anyway. I don't understand the timing, but I trust you anyway. I don't know how this will work out, but I trust you anyway." You have stepped into a higher dimension of faith. Walking through pressure with trust means recognizing that God's silence is not his absence. It means believing that even unanswered prayers are working for your good. It means understanding that God is not ignoring you. He is building you. He is stretching your capacity so you can carry what you asked him for. He is removing what you thought you needed so he can replace it with what he knows you need. He is shifting relationships, rearranging situations, and redirecting paths because he sees the end from the beginning. And when you choose trust over fear, something miraculous happens. You stop being shaken by what happens around you, and you start being anchored by what God is doing within you. You begin to move through challenges with a calm that doesn't make sense to others. You face obstacles with a confidence that confuses the enemy. You endure storms with a strength that can only come from God, because trust transforms pressure into preparation, and what once felt like a breaking point becomes a launching point. When you trust God fully, even in the pressure, you step into a realm where fear loses its voice, uncertainty loses its power, and the impossible becomes reachable. Faith speaks louder, peace stands taller, and your spirit becomes unmovable because, no matter what it looks like, God is working all things together for your good. There is a divine authority inside of you that many believers never tap into, an authority that God placed in your mouth, An authority that shapes atmospheres, commands alignment, and sets the tone for your entire day. When you speak life into your morning, you are not reciting empty phrases. You are releasing spiritual legislation. You are signing heaven's decrees with the ink of your own words. Your mouth is a tool, a weapon, a key, and what you speak becomes the environment you live in. So many people wake up and allow the day to speak to them. They let circumstances dictate their mood. They let fear whisper its predictions. They let memories of yesterday define today. But when you begin your morning by speaking life, you flip the script. You stop letting the day tell you what it will be, and you start telling the day what it must obey. You establish the spiritual climate before anything natural has the chance to sway you. You declare peace where chaos wants to creep in. You proclaim favor where obstacles try to rise. You call forth opportunity and divine encounters where the enemy hoped to plant discouragement. I've seen it in my own lifetime and time again. The moment I opened my mouth and declared God's truth over my day, the atmosphere shifted. What could have turned into conflict turned into cooperation. What looked like closed doors suddenly became divine introductions. What seemed delayed suddenly accelerated, not because of my strength, not because of my planning, but because heaven responds to the voice of faith. Your words don't just float into the air, they take form in the spirit. They go ahead of you and prepare the way. When you speak life, you are not denying reality. You are shaping it. You are aligning your environment with God's promises rather than your problems. You are reminding your soul who you are, whose you are, and what power you carry. You are teaching your spirit to rise above fear, disappointment, and negativity. You are training your mind to expect God's goodness. And as you speak, your faith grows. As you declare, your confidence strengthens. As you proclaim, your atmosphere begins to shift. This is why the enemy fights your words. He knows the power you hold when you open your mouth and decree what God has said. He knows that if he can keep you silent, he can keep you stuck. But the moment you break that silence and start speaking life, you tear down every lie, every fear, every limitation. You create space for miracles to land. You push back darkness before it tries to settle. You set angels in motion and bring divine order into your day. Speak into your morning with intention. Speak over your health. Speak over your finances. Speak over your assignment. Speak over your peace, your joy, your relationships, your destiny. Let your words rise like a prophetic wind that carries you into alignment with heaven's plan. And as you release those declarations, something powerful begins to happen. Your day starts bending in the direction of your faith. Your steps become ordered. Your mind becomes settled. Your spirit becomes steady. Because when you speak life into your morning, you awaken the power of God within you and command your day to align with destiny. There comes a moment in your journey when you realize that God has not just called you to believe, He has called you to move, to step boldly, confidently, and courageously into the things He has already prepared for you. God is not asking you to figure everything out. He is asking you to trust that every step you take by faith is met with His divine orchestration. When you walk forward with expectation, heaven aligns resources, opportunities, and people in ways you could never have arranged on your own. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs are waiting on the other side of your obedience. God will nudge you, stir you, whisper to your spirit, and prompt you to move. Move out of fear, move out of comfort, move out of stagnation. And when you obey that prompting, even if your knees are trembling, you activate a realm of blessing that had been waiting on your courage. So many people miss what God has already arranged for them simply because they remain where it feels safe. But God has never been found in the comfort zone. He is revealed in the places where your faith steps ahead of your understanding. I've learned over the years that the moment you decide to step into what God has been nudging you toward, Doors begin to open with supernatural ease. People show up at precisely the right time. Conversations happen that shift your trajectory. Solutions emerge that seemed impossible just days before. Things that once felt out of reach begin falling into place because you finally aligned your actions with what God had already spoken over your life. Your obedience becomes the bridge between where you are and where God is taking you. But stepping boldly does not mean stepping without fear. It means stepping despite it. It means recognizing that if God is orchestrating your path, then no obstacle can stop you, no delay can derail you, and no enemy can block what he has ordained. It means understanding that God goes before you, stands beside you, and carries you when necessary. It means waking up with a heart full of expectation, knowing that God has already placed everything you need along the path he is calling you to walk. There is a confidence that rises when you know heaven is arranging things on your behalf. You walk differently, you speak differently, you think differently. You move with a quiet boldness because you understand that you are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping into destiny. You are stepping into divine timing. You are stepping into prepared places, prepared blessings, prepared breakthroughs that have been waiting for you to arrive. And as you move forward, your spirit begins to recognize the hand of God in the details, the unexpected yes, the peaceful no, the sudden clarity, the gentle redirection, the opportunities that seem to chase you rather than you chasing them. You begin to understand that God doesn't need you to know everything. He just needs you to trust him enough to take the next step. So step boldly, step with expectation, step with the assurance that the God who orchestrates galaxies is the same God orchestrating your life. And as you do, watch how every piece begins to fit, every path becomes clear, and every promise God spoke begins to manifest right before your eyes. There are moments when God begins to move in your life in ways that feel subtle, almost unnoticeable, like a gentle shift in the atmosphere, a quiet stirring in your spirit, a sudden awareness that something is changing. It may not be visible at first, but you can feel it. You can sense that God is aligning something behind the scenes, preparing you for a new season, opening doors you haven't even knocked on yet. And in those moments, it becomes essential to remain sensitive, attentive, and spiritually awake because divine movement often begins in silence. God does some of his greatest work in the seasons where nothing seems to be happening. Those are the moments when he is pulling things together, placing your feet on the right path, softening the hearts of people you are meant to meet, and closing doors that would have led you into unnecessary battles. Sometimes the blessing is not in what he gives, but in what he prevents. Sometimes the miracle is not in the open door, but in the door he refuses to let you walk through. And when you trust that, you begin to see his hand everywhere, even in what you didn't understand at first. There have been times when I prayed for God to open a specific opportunity only to watch it slip away. In the moment, it felt like rejection. But later, when I saw what God brought instead, who he connected me to, what he shielded me from, where he redirected me, I realized it wasn't rejection at all. It was divine protection. It was God saying, I have something better. Trust me. And that is the beauty of walking with God, even when things don't go the way you planned, that they still go exactly the way they should. When God begins aligning things for your next season, he often starts with your inner world. He begins purging old mindsets, breaking unhealthy patterns, and healing wounds you didn't even realize were affecting you. He begins detaching you from people who can't go where he's taking you. He removes habits, environments, and distractions that would interfere with your progress. This internal alignment is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. You cannot walk into a new season carrying the weight of the old one. As God orchestrates your elevation, you'll notice that your spirit becomes more discerning. You become more protective of your peace. You start paying attention to the things that drain you and the things that feed you. You begin to hear God more clearly, not because He is speaking louder, but because you are becoming quieter. Your priorities shift. Your appetite changes. What once entertained you no longer satisfies you. What once distracted you no longer appeals to you. This is how you know God is preparing you for more. And when everything around you seems still or uncertain, that's often when God is working the hardest. He is aligning the timing, arranging the right connections, positioning the right opportunities, and preparing the right conditions for your breakthrough. He is orchestrating details too intricate for you to see, too complex for you to understand, and too perfectly timed for you to ever recreate on your own. So trust the alignment, trust the silence, trust the shifts that don't make sense yet. Because when God is setting the stage for your next season, every detail, no matter how small, carries purpose. Every delay has intention. Every redirection holds wisdom. And every unseen movement is leading you towards something greater than you imagined. There is a point in your walk with God when you begin to recognize that your life is not being held together by coincidences, but by the intentional hand of a God who never miscalculates. You begin to notice patterns, divine alignments, unusual favor, unexpected provision that reveal God is not just watching your journey, He is actively arranging it. And as you grow in faith, you start to realize that nothing you face, nothing you endure, nothing you overcome is wasted. God uses every moment as part of a master plan designed to shape you, strengthen you, and position you for what He promised. You may not see the full picture yet, but God does. He sees the battles you fought in silence. He sees the tears you cried when no one else was watching. He sees the sacrifices you made that others overlooked. And He has been storing every one of them like seeds planted in the soil of your destiny. There comes a time when those seeds begin to bloom, not because you pushed hard enough, not because you were perfect, but because the season finally caught up with the promise God spoke over your life. And this is where many people grow weary. They think God has forgotten them because the breakthrough hasn't shown up yet. But what they don't realize is that right before manifestation, life often becomes the quietest, the stillest, the most uneventful. It's the space between sowing and reaping. It's the moment where nothing looks different on the outside, but everything is shifting in the spiritual realm. God is arranging people you haven't met yet, preparing opportunities you haven't seen yet, and clearing pathways you haven't walked yet. The silence is not abandonment, it's preparation. When you truly grasp this, you stop panicking when things slow down. You stop questioning every delay. You stop fearing every change. Instead, you begin to expect God to move in ways that defy logic. You wake up each day with a quiet confidence, knowing that heaven has already gone before you. You realize that the same God who parted seas, brought water from rocks, and shut the mouths of lions is the same God orchestrating your life today. And if He handled the impossible then, He can handle the impossible now. Walking with that awareness changes everything. You start to move differently. You speak differently. You pray differently. You make decisions from a place of faith rather than fear. You understand that your steps are not random, they are ordered. Your breakthroughs are not delayed, they are timed. Your blessings are not fragile, they are secured by a God who finishes what He starts. The very things the enemy thought would break you are becoming the things God will use to elevate you. And as you keep walking, you begin to see signs of God's orchestration everywhere. A closed door that suddenly makes sense, a disappointing moment that turns into direction, a missed opportunity that saved you from harm, a setback that positioned you for something greater. You begin to say, now I see why that had to happen. Now I understand why God said no. Now I understand why He made me wait. Because the pieces you thought were scattered were never scattered at all. They were simply being arranged into something far more beautiful than you imagined. And when that realization hits your spirit, you step into your day not with hesitation, but with holy expectation, knowing that God is not only working, He is working all things together for your good. There is a profound power in choosing to start your day with God, to allow His presence to saturate every moment from the very first breath you take. When you do this, you are not just beginning a morning, you are setting the trajectory for your entire day, your week, your life. You are declaring that the chaos of yesterday does not dictate the blessing of today. You are choosing faith over fear, expectation over doubt, and God's plan over your own limited understanding. This is more than a routine, it is a declaration of sovereignty over your life, a spiritual posture that positions you to see everything fall into place. Every morning offers a fresh canvas, a space where God can paint possibilities that yesterday could never contain. But that canvas does not fill itself. It responds to your faith, your declarations, your surrender, the words you speak, the prayers you release, and the trust you place in Him become the brushstrokes that shape your day. I have witnessed countless moments where a single morning prayer shifted circumstances that seemed insurmountable, a difficult relationship softened, a financial need met, a long awaited breakthrough appeared, all because the day began in alignment with God's will. There is supernatural authority in the voice of faith, and when you start your day with that voice, heaven responds immediately. Starting your morning in this way also transforms how you handle challenges. When pressures arise, when deadlines loom, when unexpected obstacles appear, your spirit remains anchored because it is rooted in God's presence. The enemy may try to introduce fear, confusion, or frustration, but the one who begins the day in prayer has already fortified their heart. Your peace becomes a shield, your clarity becomes a compass, and your confidence becomes a weapon against doubt. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are operating from the center of divine order. I remember mornings when I felt completely unprepared for what lay ahead. The tasks were overwhelming, the responsibilities unending, and the expectations suffocating. But I made the choice to pause, to breathe, and to surrender the day to God. And in that moment of surrender, everything shifted. Doors I didn't even know existed opened. Conversations that seemed impossible were guided into alignment. Problems that felt insurmountable found solutions. That morning, I learned that the first few minutes of your day determine the momentum of every hour to follow. What you release to God in the quiet of dawn becomes the foundation upon which your success, your peace, and your breakthrough are built. There is also a spiritual sensitivity that awakens when you start your day in prayer. You begin to notice God's guidance in ways you would otherwise miss. You discern opportunities that others overlook. You recognize dangers before they manifest. Your intuition becomes sharpened because your spirit has been tuned to God's frequency. The alignment is not just external, it is internal, a transformation of heart, mind, and soul that positions you to move with divine precision. And when you step into the day with this alignment, you realize that nothing is random. Every encounter, every circumstance, every connection has been carefully orchestrated by a loving, all-knowing God. So each morning, take time to rise with intention. Speak life over your day. Declare God's favor over your work, your family, your health, and your finances. Ask Him to guide your steps, illuminate your path, and orchestrate every detail. Know that when you do, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, obstacles dissolve, doors open, and every piece of your life begins to fall into place. This is the power of beginning your day with God, not just to survive, but to thrive, to walk in supernatural alignment, and to witness His promises manifest in ways beyond what you could ever imagine. There comes a point when you realize that faith is not just about believing in God's promises. It is about living as though those promises are already in motion. It is about carrying a posture of expectation, even when the circumstances scream otherwise. Too many people wait for visible proof before they act, before they speak, before they step forward. But God calls us to a higher order of trust, to move in faith, to speak in faith, and to believe in the unseen. This is the very essence of spiritual authority, the ability to operate in alignment with God's will before the world catches up to it. When you live in this place of faith, you begin to understand that every challenge you face is a divine opportunity. Every trial, every delay, every obstacle is not meant to destroy you, but to develop you. Life may attempt to push you off course, but God is constantly realigning you. He is constantly rearranging circumstances, positioning people, and orchestrating events to fulfill what He has already spoken over your life. You may not see the full picture yet, but faith allows you to trust in the pattern that God is weaving behind the scenes. You learn to walk steadily even when the path seems uncertain, because you know the one who holds the future is guiding every step. I have experienced countless seasons where things appeared to be falling apart, but as I pressed into faith, I began to see the invisible hand of God at work. Doors that seemed permanently closed opened with ease. Relationships that had been strained were restored. Opportunities that had been delayed arrived at the perfect moment. It was in those moments that I realized faith does not simply change your circumstances, it changes your perspective. It lifts your eyes above the chaos and trains your heart to see what God sees, a path of victory, favor, and divine order. Faith also transforms the way you speak. Your words become declarations that shape reality, not just expressions of hope. You begin to speak with authority over your life, your family, your work, and your destiny. You declare health where sickness lingers. You declare provision where scarcity threatens. You declare peace where anxiety tempts you. Your faith-infused words command heaven to align with your life, and the spiritual atmosphere begins to shift in response. The enemy may still attempt to challenge you, but when your words carry faith, his power diminishes. Faith speaks, and the heavens respond. Moreover, faith fuels persistence. It keeps you moving when the road is long, the wait seems endless, and discouragement knocks at your door. It gives you the courage to continue when others would quit. It teaches patience without resignation, endurance without despair, and hope without hesitation. Faith is the invisible engine that drives your steps forward even when the path seems unclear. It is what allows you to rise each morning with renewed expectation, knowing that what God has promised is on its way. And when you fully embrace this kind of faith, you experience a remarkable alignment in your life. The things that were once confusing begin to make sense. The pieces of your journey, once scattered, fall into place. Opportunities, relationships, and blessings start to converge in ways that defy logic, timing, and human understanding. You begin to realize that nothing in your life is accidental. Every twist, every turn, every delay, every victory is part of a grand design, orchestrated by a God who is faithful, who is intentional, and who delights in seeing his promises fulfilled in your life. Faith then becomes more than belief. It becomes a way of life, a posture of power, and the key that unlocks everything God has prepared for you. There is a profound power in expectation, the kind of expectation that does not waver with circumstances, does not falter with delay, and does not diminish in the face of opposition. Expectation is the spiritual lens through which you begin to see the invisible hand of God at work in your life. It is the fuel that propels your faith from belief into action, transforming prayer into tangible results. When you rise each morning with expectation, you are positioning yourself to recognize the opportunities, encounters, and breakthroughs God has already arranged for you. Expectation is not passive, it is active, it is deliberate, and it sets the stage for every promise to manifest. I have walked through seasons where the world appeared stagnant, where doors seemed permanently closed, and where answers seemed impossibly delayed. But even in those moments, expectation created a posture in my spirit that refused to settle for less than God's best. I began to speak with anticipation, pray with certainty, and move with assurance. And in that posture, miracles began to unfold, what others called luck or coincidence, I recognized as divine orchestration. Expectation trains your eyes to see the hand of God at work before it becomes visible, and it trains your spirit to trust the timing of the Almighty even when it contradicts your calendar. Expectation also transforms your approach to challenges. When you expect God to move, obstacles become opportunities, delays become preparation, and opposition becomes a signal that something greater is coming. Your mindset shifts from fear to faith, from frustration to focus, and from worry to worship. You begin to walk with confidence, knowing that God's plan is already in motion, even if the path is not yet clear. This is the secret to moving boldly into destiny, the ability to anticipate the fulfillment of promises and to act in alignment with what God has already declared. There is also a contagious nature to expectation. When you operate from a place of anticipation, it impacts those around you. Your words inspire, your faith encourages, and your confidence uplifts. People begin to align with your vision, doors open more readily, and opportunities gravitate toward you. Expectation has a way of creating momentum. It draws divine favor, orchestrates connections, and releases provision at precisely the right moment. It is the spiritual magnet that pulls promises out of heaven and into your reality. And perhaps most importantly, expectation strengthens your endurance. It allows you to persist when results are not immediate, to continue when prayers seem unanswered, and to maintain peace when circumstances appear contrary. Expectation reminds you that God is never late, that He is always on time, and that what He has promised will come to pass in perfect season. It is the spiritual posture that bridges the gap between prayer and manifestation, between hope and fulfillment, between vision and reality. So as you rise each day, choose to live in expectation. Speak it aloud. Declare it over your life. Anticipate God's intervention, guidance, and provision in every situation. Watch how your faith aligns with action, how opportunities open, and how circumstances bend toward your favor. Expectation is not wishful thinking. It is a declaration of trust, a posture of readiness, and the key that unlocks the unfolding of every promise God has spoken into your life. When you step forward with expectation, you are stepping directly into the manifestation of God's perfect plan.